All right, one more time without the mic muted. Welcome back to another Reaper blog tutorial. I recently got the HM-2 pedal. It's a really weird pedal, and it sounds very strange depending on the amp you go into it. Sometimes it sounds great. Sometimes it sounds totally bizarre and weird, and you would think it's unusable. But in this video, I'll talk about how I've found some really nice, fun to play tones, as well as how I'm using it in mixes to layer with other guitars. I'm playing through the Solar guitar, I don't know the model, single cutaway with pretty light strings. And for the amp, we're using Amplitube, just a basic Brit 8000. Got the master turned up a little bit higher than default. It sounds like this. If I turn on the pedal, sounds really weird, doesn't it? So that's on standard mode. This version has a custom mode, which increases the gain, changes the filter curve. And in my opinion, that just does not work when using it with guitar amps. What I've actually been using this most with is bass amps, particularly with this Ampeg SVT VR Classic. And this is from Brainworx, Plugin Alliance, and this was for a limited time, for like 2 weeks or something, this was free. So the way I use this, here's how it sounds by default, pretty quiet. Volume all the way up. Click the panel down here. If this was just a basic guitar by itself, I would probably put the input gain at +20. And then power soak down. So it's not clipping. And I changed the cabinet to this. And I might turn off this setting and turn up the bass and treble. And by itself, this Ampeg, when set this way, is a very kind of crunchy guitar tone. Lots of mids. I really dig it. All right, let's turn the input gain down a little bit. And now let's turn on the pedal. Let's put this kind of flat. Turn it on. And we'll just adjust the power soak level here. So it's got a really thick low end. It's got a fuzzy high end and mid range, kind of scooped sounding. I tend to go the standard mode, the highs around there. Level ends up being around here, and actually hardly ever go above 40%, let's say, on the distortion. Turn that down a bit, sorry guys. I think this is a great combo. The HM-2 with the Ampeg SVT. You probably wouldn't do it in real life, but I did see Kurt Ballou, a video from years ago, trying out a bunch of HM-2s with the Ampeg, with the real Ampeg, and it sounded bizarre in that situation as well. But in the box, you don't tend to mix and match and do things the wrong way. You don't tend to think of a bass amp for guitars, but I really like it. And I think you can get a much better sound if you swap out the cab in this to reverb, and you bring in your own impulse response. So I'm going to turn the dry all the way down, add in a file. I'm just going to add in an SM57, and I will normalize this to 0. Listen to that sustain. It's for days. And it's interesting how much the tone changes just by adjusting the input volume. There's a moment where it sounds more fizzy and a moment where it sounds more powerful. And more powerful is pretty much all the way up on the input. The power soak function is really just a clean gain change, but the input gain seems to affect the characteristic of the distortion. All right, now I'm going to load up a project that I've been using this sort of technique with somebody else's guitar playing. And I think it's turned out even better. And we're jump cutting all the way to the next day. And yeah, so let's do this. This video is cursed. This is a project I've been mixing, and the guitars that they recorded were through bias effects. And what I did was take their DI tracks and run that through the HM-2 pedal. In the mixes for this album, I'm using their original guitars with some effects through the HM-2 and an additional amplitude track, depending on the song. And depending on the section of the song, I'm changing the balances. Here's the original guitars with some basic effects like EQ. I've been using the new Toucan Studios Sphinx, which is meant to get rid of nasal, honky sort of sounds. It's also great for getting rid of gross, fizzy stuff. So without that, it sounds like this. Takes away all that disgusting edge that you don't want to hear. So that's my starting point for the guitars. I wanted to run it through the HM-2 pedal and the Ampeg, and I used the reinsert plugin for that. So I took one output through the pedal back into the input, and then the plugin for the SVT. These are the settings that I used. So input gain at 0, power soak at -14, no cabinet, and I used a SM57 6 inches away. Then a bit of post EQ. HM-2 guitars sound like this. Pretty weird. Listen to how much they add to this project. One Reaper-specific thing that I can show you here is something that was added recently for the record output mode. So I had the DI track sent over to a new track, this Get Chunky L reamp track. This was set to record output, not input. So it's not listening to the input, it's listening to the output of the effects chain. And I have it set to record mono. I also have this set to post effects pre-fader. So then I could set my fader at any level I wanted, and that's not going to be printed into the audio files. So I can balance the mix as it's reamping without changing the balance, which is really nice. I've been using that a lot on this mixing project. I also narrowed the pan of these a little bit so that it fills in the center channel a little bit more. There's kind of a gap between. And so, yeah, I like that this adds like this dark, kind of throaty distortion, kind of a fuzz. It sounds weird on its own, but I think it enhances the overall project. The other thing here that I experimented with is the polarity invert. Normally, you just want to go with what has the most low end with the polarity. With multi-amp guitar things, sometimes it's a matter of taste because on or off phase doesn't always translate to just better or worse. It's just different. And that's the case with this. I wasn't getting a lot of low-end cancellation, but what I was getting was just sort of a different tonality that was interesting. Normal polarity sounds like this. Kind of just shifts the lower mid frequencies in a nice way. You can like either way. Neither of those is wrong, obviously wrong. Like there's not complete phase cancellation with either of those options. They're just different. So that's how I've been using the HM-2 with the Ampeg in a real mix. This HM-2, super weird pedal, very unique sound that is definitely getting a lot of use recently. And yeah, I like it a lot. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon. And visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.